Do you suffer from sleep paralysis regularly? Perhaps you've never experienced it before, but you're afraid of what will happen if you do. Or maybe you're afraid to try lucid dreaming because you're afraid that you're going to enter sleep paralysis when you try to lucid dream. Don't worry if that's the case. Today I'm going to teach you how to stop being afraid of sleep paralysis once and for all. Now don't worry if this is you, you're not alone. I was terrified of sleep paralysis the first times that I experienced it. But over time, I learned how to stop being scared of sleep paralysis through a few simple techniques that I'm going to share with you today. If you're finding this video through search or you're otherwise new here, I'm Matt, this is Tipharot, where I talk about dreams and lucid dreaming, as well as a little bit of self-development content thrown into the mix. So if you like the idea of remembering lots of dreams every night and then being able to control those dreams and do whatever you like, stick around, hit that subscribe button, enable notifications, and check out the hundreds of lucid dreaming videos offered for free on my channel. So first of all, let's address the elephant in the room, sleep paralysis and lucid dreaming. After all, this is a lucid dreaming channel. Do you have to experience sleep paralysis to lucid dream? Not only would I argue that you do not have to experience sleep paralysis to lucid dream, I would argue that if you are experiencing sleep paralysis, you're probably doing something wrong. For example, if you're performing a technique like Wild, you can find yourself entering into sleep paralysis if you lay there still enough for long enough. But if you lay there still enough for long enough and you're not in a dream yet, then there's probably something wrong with your technique, because you should be able to enter a dream very quickly with Wild before you actually experience sleep paralysis. And that's one technique. You have a host of other techniques that aren't putting you at risk of sleep paralysis. Things like reality checks, things like Mild, things like using mantras or simply setting your intention to lucid dream before bed. If you're trying to avoid sleep paralysis and trying to lucid dream, the only thing that I would suggest is maybe be a little bit careful with Wild. But even then, like I said, you shouldn't need to be doing it for so long that you're entering sleep paralysis. However, that said, it's quite likely that you're going to experience sleep paralysis at some point in your life, and some people are more prone to this than others, and some people find that when it occurs frequently for a while. So there's a good chance, whether you like it or not, you are going to have sleep paralysis. Maybe you already do and you experience it regularly. Maybe you've never had it before, but you are going to experience it regularly at some period in your life in the future. So the first tip that I'm going to give you to try and get over that fear is to have a bit of an understanding of what's going on in sleep paralysis. So there's a bit of confusion regarding sleep paralysis, because often you'll hear people describing that in sleep paralysis you wake up in bed and you're paralysed and you're seeing things like, a demon standing over you, or a shadowy figure in the corner of your room, or something sitting on your chest. Others will say that you're still dreaming, but then if you're still dreaming, why are you paralysed? Why can't you move about like you normally could if you were, say, in a lucid dream? The truth is, neither of these answers are fully correct, and neither of them are fully incorrect either. You are essentially either in hypnagogia, if you're falling asleep, or hypnopompia, if you're waking up, and experiencing the hallucinations that can occur during those stages. The difference is, for whatever reason, your body has not snapped out of the usual paralysis that you experience during your sleep, called REM-atonia, that protects you from acting out your dreams. Or, if you experience it during hypnagogia, you are entering sleep paralysis before you're entering a dream, so you're finding yourself suddenly paralysed during the process of falling asleep. So what you have is this weird experience of feeling awake in bed, being partially awake, hallucinating, and being unable to move, which obviously can be quite a scary experience. Where it can get scarier is people then attempt to wake themselves up by moving, but find that because of the paralysis they can't seem to move, so they're afraid that they can't wake themselves up. Now I'll give you a little tip here. If you want to wake yourself up from sleep paralysis, it's easier to do so with tiny movements rather than big ones. Think just ever so slightly moving your fingertips or wiggling your toes. Do that a little bit, and without fail, usually within about 15 to 30 seconds you'll have woken up. However, you should understand these things. You should understand first of all that the paralysis, like I said, is part of a natural sleep process. You experience paralysis during your dreams at night to avoid you acting them out, because when you actually walk around in a dream, you're sending off signals to your actual muscles in your body. So if you did not have REM-atonia, the paralysis that occurs, you would basically probably try to get up out of bed and maybe run into a wall or something. In fact, if someone has impaired REM-atonia, they can actually get themselves hurt like this. So sleep paralysis is a byproduct, a side effect of a really important mechanism that we have to keep ourselves safe at night. Now unfortunately, sometimes the body gets it wrong, and while falling asleep or waking up, we experience ourselves in that paralysis without actually being in a dream, yet also while sometimes experiencing vivid hallucinations. So the next question you might have is, why is sleep paralysis scary in the first place? Well, due to the confusion of seemingly being awake in bed and paralysed as it seems to feel at the time, your amygdala is going crazy and you are sensing that, hey, there's a big threat here. So you have all of your usual fear responses going haywire, and you have your fight or flight response going off, but you can't fight because you can't move, and you can't flight either because you can't move. So of course it's a recipe for being quite afraid. This sense of fear itself is also likely to encourage the somewhat scarier hallucinations that people experience, because if you go into an experience of sleep paralysis without fear, you'll often notice that you get either no hallucinations at all, or more pleasant ones rather than the scary ones. So now that we're armed with a bit of information about sleep paralysis and perhaps don't see it as this horrible threatening thing, we know there's no big scary shadow man standing over us and it's just a hallucination. We know that the paralysis isn't something dangerous and it's actually a side effect of something that's designed to protect us. So what can we do to reduce the fear further? Well, as with all fears, experience reduces fear while avoidance tends to increase it. That is really, really important here because I see a lot of people saying, I'm scared of sleep paralysis, what can I do to avoid it? And that is the wrong approach. If you're scared of something, the more that you avoid it, the worse that fear is going to get in your head because you have no experience with this thing. So you're going to build it up to be a worse and worse thing. And each time that you do experience it, you're going to have experiences that confirm that because that's what you're expecting. And so it's just going to become this self-fulfilling prophecy of you having really scary sleep paralysis. So what do I mean by experience here? Well, I am suggesting to you to practice inducing sleep paralysis yourself. And once you get into it, rather than immediately wiggling your fingers or toes trying to end the experience, to try and remain as still as possible and simply lay there in sleep paralysis. You're not trying to turn it into a dream or an out-of-body experience or anything like that. You're just laying there and experiencing sleep paralysis. Feeling the sensations, not trying to judge them, not trying to label them as bad or good, just feeling what's happening and getting used to the sensation of sleep paralysis. Alternatively, if you're someone that already experiences sleep paralysis on a regular basis, then you might not need to even bother trying to induce it. You can just wait for your next sleep paralysis episode, and once you get in that, remind yourself to stay still and try to experience it for as long as you can. Now, I'm not saying try to sit there for half an hour or whatever, but at least try to sit in that state for a few minutes if you can manage it. What you'll find is that while it can be quite jarring and shocking at first, the more time that you spend there, the less scary it gets. Now, if you don't experience sleep paralysis or you don't experience it often enough to do this and you do want to induce it, I actually have a video on my channel about how to induce sleep paralysis. Hopefully there'll be a link in the top right hand corner now, but if I forget for some reason, just search how to induce sleep paralysis, Tipharot, or search on my channel for how to induce sleep paralysis. Now, my next tip for you is going to be a little bit of a weird one. Now, as those who've been with the channel for a long time know, when I first got into lucid dreaming and out-of-body experiences, I was very much on the woo side of the spectrum. Probably the wackier and wilder a theory was, the more likely I was to believe it. Now, I still love me certain aspects of woo-woo, I just don't talk about it on this channel because I don't want people to confuse unverified, out there, weird, wacky theories with stuff that is proven like lucid dreaming. But basically, in particular, what I'm referring to was an astral projection video that I watched ages ago where someone was talking about dealing with negative entities and that if you encountered these fear-based entities that made you feel afraid, you could simply interact with them with love and it would make them stop harming you or make them stop scaring you. One day I had the idea to try this during sleep paralysis. I was having a particularly unsettling sleep paralysis experience where it literally felt like I had a dementor standing over me or something, just pouring pure fear into me. And I had this idea to try and feel love towards this entity that I was hallucinating. And I did that, and strangely enough, it worked. The experience went from a scary and unpleasant experience to just feeling calm and peaceful. And in fact, funnily enough, after that, I then hallucinated the thing, the entity, whatever it was, the quote-unquote dementor, giving me a hug. And in hindsight, it's really obvious why that worked. It's the same as in a lucid dream. If you're having a nightmare, or if dream characters are acting hostile towards you, acting kindly towards them and imagining that they're going to act kindly back towards you can be enough to change that because you're changing what you're subconsciously believing is going to happen, and that's changing the outcome. So the next time you find yourself in sleep paralysis and find yourself scared, try something like this. Try believing that the entity there that you're hallucinating is simply there to protect you, to watch over you. It's simply there to give you a hug. As silly as I promise you this is going to feel when you do this, you'll be surprised at how really effective it actually is. So if you try what I suggested earlier, getting comfortable with longer times in sleep paralysis, and you find that a bit too difficult, you can try and combine it with this to make those experiences a little bit more pleasant. Now, once you've had lots of sleep paralysis experiences, some decently long ones, and also some ones that were neutral or even pleasant, you're going to start to realise that sleep paralysis stops scaring you. Just remember though that avoidance makes fear worse. Facing your fears is how you get over them. So try and face your fear of sleep paralysis, try and get over it, and you're going to find it so much easier to have neutral or pleasant sleep paralysis experiences rather than having to be afraid to go to sleep at night because you're worried about what's going to happen. Hope you found this video helpful. If you did, make sure you subscribe and enable all notifications so you can stay up to date when our new videos come out. And if you want to watch one right now, go check out one of the ones on screen. I'll see you there soon. Take care and have some awesome lucid dreams.